Hey guys, welcome back. I just wanted to talk about what is likely going to be my last build of the league. It's going to be about a Kinetic Bolt build that I decided to make because I saw a thread a couple weeks ago on Reddit, on the Path of Exile subreddit, in which they were talking about build diversity and how they were disappointed and when's the last time you saw a Kinetic Bolt build, blah, blah, blah. So that inspired me a little bit. And the other thing was I already had a Kinetic Bolt build in my path of building. It was one of the 15 that I theory crafted before the league start, in particular because of Diala's. Now, so specifically we'll be dealing with anomalous Kinetic Bolt, which has a scalar of, it scales cast speed into attack speed, and it Kinetic Bolt by default already converts spell damage into attack damage at 200% of its normal value. So those two things make it a prime candidate for being a hybrid build, so this eventually ended up being a cast-on crit build because of a couple other reasons. And Diala's really did open this up to be viable, I think, because with Diala's, we're able to have a 3-to-1 conversion rate for that cast to attack speed, which was not really a thing before. Now we are able to hit 300% increased, 300% of your cast speed is converted into your attack speed. And so we're getting absolutely nutty attack rates. We're using a 1.2 attacks per second weapon and coming out with 11 attacks per second at all times, which is just insanity. And it feels really good. It feels like on the level of tornado shot, kind of meta map clearing good. Whenever you have that much attack speed and cast speed, everything just feels great. Everything's super responsive. Your character has a few millisecond delay between attacking. He has almost no delay between I'm using both Flame Dash and Lightning Warp here. Can both make use of that ridiculously high cast speed. So I'll run some footage real quick of just what it looks like mapping this. We're doing Alcan Go tier 16 mapping with spec'd into Abysses and Alva Temples. For the record, we're not using GMP, we're not using any additional projectiles in this build. This is just with the Wand Mastery +1 projectiles to attacks. This is just how many the skill has built in. It's really nice clear without having any investment whatsoever, which is good because we need those extra sockets for damage multipliers. There also isn't any projectile speed in the build, this is its normal speed. Feels pretty good. As you can see, the cast on crit spell that we're using here is Soul Rend, a spell I've actually never made a build around, which is another reason it's nice. It also just thematically just kind of looks nice, kind of goes along with everything. It does have a built-in 4% regen to energy shield, which is a little bit nice for helping Eldritch Battery with its regen out a bit, because we are just eating we're consuming mana at a ridiculous rate here, because we have almost 100% increase or 100% chance to crit, super high crit chance build with almost at the same time, almost not even investing in it. There's very few there's no going out of your way for crit chance at all. And it still ends up being between 90 and 100% crit chance, which is just, it's great. One of the normal issues is that Kinetic Bolt doesn't usually have great single target damage. It's only a base 170% damage multiplier, and whenever you have an attack skill that has such a low damage multiplier, it's pretty hard to scale it up to endgame bosses. But that's not the case here. This is easily enough DPS to take any of the content in the game you like. It deletes arch nemesis mobs, it deletes just about here. I guess you'll see me take out a temple boss here. You can probably base on the damage right there about how much damage it is right now in an unoptimized setup. I only have about 1,000 strength here. You could scale that much higher and get quite a bit more damage out of it. I estimate this is between 2 to 4 million damage when it's ramped up, and it feels really solid. Much better than any other Kinetic Bolt build I've ever tried that just don't really have that single target damage. And here you can see my frustration that I'm getting down in incursions and apparently don't have that last connection to the corruption chamber quite yet, even though we just made it level 3. I did not see that we did not have any bridges, so my algorithm that I use for completing temples apparently is failing me on this one. But yeah, this mapping just feels great. I mean, I don't think I've played another skill other than the Vol Earthquake build before this that really... And there are different kinds of... That skill is actually probably better at running like underground river, like, you know, it's kind of narrow pathways faster, and this build's great at just wide open spaces, decimating the entire, like this Ashen Wood here. There's probably some better ones, honestly, though, because Ashen Wood has a lot of things to get in the way of projectiles, but... Okay, I think I'm just, finishing up the tablet here, so we'll move over to the actual build. So what's going on here? Well, like I said, we're using anomalous kinetic bolt, which, as you can see, is giving us 300% of our cast speed to attack speed. So this means that we're obviously looking where we can for getting cast speed. There's a couple obvious choices here, I think. We'll talk about them in a second. I'm going to go over the rest of these gems real quick. Added chaos damage, and also this is probably not the most... I think that a large damage multiplier would actually be better here than some added chaos damage, but this is a remnant from some of my testing with the build. We're just running power charge on critical strike, because with this many power charges, obviously it's a big more damage multiplier, as well as making getting power charge generation extremely easy. This is the most interesting part of the support link setup. Anomalous cast on critical strike support is just a really cool alt gem. It's one of my favorite alt gems because trying to make these hybrids work, this is exactly what GGG needs to do in order to make hybrid builds work. So here we've got, with 50% quality on an anomalous cast on critical strike support, we get 50% more attack damage. As in, yes, more. So this makes the cast on crit setup almost free. Because you figure, what are you missing out when you go cast on crit? Well, that it's a cast on crit support gem and the spell. In our case, we're using Soul Rend. But that's 2 gems, and 2 gems roughly equates in this day and age of PoE to be around 50 to 60% more damage. And so this completely almost makes up for it. This is great. It's hard to imagine a better way of making a hybrid setup work. So this is absolutely critical to the build. We're using Awakened Enhance for the additional 40% quality of, and I don't want to tell you how many Dialas I've tried taking to the temple to corrupt to get an additional +1 to this. I think I'm on around 34, and I, out of 34 attempts in the temple, only gotten 2 actual double corrupt implicits, which is the worst, I think, my worst luck I've ever had with the temple, to be honest. So I'm going to keep going with that, but no luck right now. Right now we get 40% because that's a level 4 Awakened Enhance. And then the other interesting thing here is Phantasmal Soul Rend. So by default, without Adialas, you're from 20% quality, you get 100% increased damage with hits. Because we have all of the additional quality here, we actually get 600%. And that's obviously just another huge boost. Sorry, the cat had to be let out. So yeah, the additional just free 600% increased damage with hits, which made Soul Rend, in my opinion, the best candidate for this build. Some other options that I messed around with, one of the alt gem Crackling Lances that you can convert all the lightning damage to chaos, because remember, because of replica Alvarons, we can only deal chaos damage, so it can only be either spells that you can convert to chaos or just chaos spells. And in this case, like I said, I think that Soul Rend is probably the best bet. It gives us a little bit of extra flex. It also has projectiles pierce all targets, and we don't have a whole lot of sources of pierce on this this tree. I just so you know, I do wish there were more ways of converting to chaos damage, or just more methods of conversion in general, because why not? Honestly, as long as there's an investment cost, I don't see why they don't add more options for converting damage. But as it is, then this is thematically pretty neat. Soul Rend looks nice in this setup. It feels nice, so I can't complain too much. It's pretty good. So the next thing to talk about is Necromancer. Some of you might immediately know why we're going Necromancer, and if you don't, it's because of Corpse Pact. Now, you don't have to go Necromancer for this. You could, if you're rolling in money, you could go any witch and Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame, Corpse Pact. But Corpse Pact is one of the most expensive Forbidden Flesh flames. I mean, it's gonna run you at least around 20 in order to slot this, and that was a bit, I don't know, it was a bit too much, especially considering the fact that the other thing we're going to talk about here is Mistress of Sacrifice. We're making the most, I think, out of this that we possibly can. It's really, in this build, great just for gaining a bunch of bonuses. So yeah, Necromancer. A second pick would obviously be Occultist. Occultist with all the extra chaosy goodness would be ideal. Probably the best possible setup would be Occultist while Forbidden Fleshing Corpse Pact. But instead, I'm doing it the other way around. I think that what I would do, or my plan, I don't have it slotted yet, but I would probably go for Withering Presence. The best one would be Forbidden Power. Forbidden Power is the node on Occultist that gives you all the bonuses and the additional power charge, which is huge for scaling on this build. But Forbidden Power isn't cheap either. If I was going to go Forbidden Power, it's no better than really going Dark Pact, to be honest. They're just really expensive, but if we're talking about the best of the best, that's probably the way to go. Now, if you're not familiar with Corpse Pact scaling, how it works is for each corpse that we consume, we get an additional increase to attack and cast speed. Now, you might be looking at this thinking, wow, that's fantastic. We get to double dip. We get increased attack speed and we get increased cast speed, which then gets turned into more attack. No, it's not how any of these hybrid. Generally speaking, the rule in Path of Exile is if something is all on one line, on the same sentence, the same line of text, the same single modifier, if it's all part of the same thing, it only applies once to something. In a previous video of mine, you would have seen this occur with Varanastra, and we've got the same thing happening here. If it's not on two lines, it only applies once. So how does this work? Well, anytime you see a line like this that says it increases this and it increases that, the game's going to choose whichever benefits you more. In this case, it's going to give us the 2% increased cast speed, which then gets converted to 6% increased cast speed per corpse because of our 300% conversion rate. So this goes up to a maximum of 200%, which gives us the ability to scale cast speed all the way up to potentially 600% here. That's amazing. That by itself pretty much lets us hit the limits on cast speed. But why stop there? Why? See, the downside is that there's a ramp-up time for this, right? So I like the attack speed to feel ridiculous all the time, not just when I ramp up with my corpses. And we'll get into how we're ramping up our corpses in just a second. So what else are we doing for cast speed? Well, as you might see, something that I like to do in my other videos, we're using the 3 Might of Meek setup again. And it gets us a lot of benefit for this build in particular because these 3 nodes here are 21% increased cast speed, which translates to 63% increased attack speed. These nodes here translate into 85% increased spell damage, which for us is actually 170% increased attack damage. We get to, this build is going to have, you're going to have trouble filling out your resistances because there's a lot of uniques and things going on, so these are great for that. And then we've also got an additional 20% increased chance to block attack damage right here and an additional 60% increased life over here. So I think that this build might just be getting the most benefit or most efficiency because of our conversion rates out of this setup than any recent build I've done with this 3 Might of the Meek setup. So that right there gives us, the 21% increased cast speed. We've got another 5% increased cast speed there. We've got some attack speed over here in the wand cluster. We've got, not a ton of. We've got some cast speed on the Necromancer tree. It looks like we got an extra 8% cast speed on there, and but overall, we're not really investing super heavy on the tree. I would say, from what we looked at on the tree there, that's about between 30 and 40% cast speed. But 30 to 44% cast speed translates to 90 to 120% attack speed, which is significant. And we haven't even talked about the gear. With the Lake of Kalandra gear, you can get up to 45% increased cast speed on your rings, which would then be, 90% between 90% cast speed on 2 rings would net you, 270% increased attack speed. Just absurd. So yeah, I've got these are I have some super cheap. I bought both these rings for less than 50 chaos. They've just got stats and cast speed. This one's strength. My other one is filling out my dex, and we do need a little bit of dex because we are an attack build. We do want accuracy. We don't want to have to give up our crit or anything like that in order to hit. So yeah, these rings were really super cheap. You could go a lot further with this setup. So that's where we're getting cast speed. Also, our void batteries both have up to 20%. So there's another 40%, which is another 120%. So just amazing scaling on cast speed. And the other thing, obviously, that we're looking to scale is spell damage. Now, what are all the ways that we're scaling spell damage? Well, first off, we're doing it. I just showed you that we're using void batteries. Void batteries get 25% increased spell damage per power charge, and we're using 2 of them. And we've got all of the max power charges on the tree allocated. We've got we go all the way over here to overcharge, and we're taking this route because we're using split personality here. We've got the one by the witch tree, and we've allocated onto our ashes the last one by the shadow. That with the 2 void batteries gives us 8. Now we could potentially get 9 with a corruption on the helm, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, power charge scaling. So that many power charges scaling our spell damage a lot. But that's not the only way. From that, we're getting, from void batteries and 8 power charges, we're looking at, about, looks like, 100, and after the 80% reduced spell damage, we're going to be looking at 160% increased spell damage, which then gets translated to 320% per void battery. So we're looking at 640% increased attack damage from 2 void batteries and spell charges alone. But wait, there's more! So, one of the coolest things about the build being a strength stacker, the best current way of getting generic spell damage in the game probably is Iron Will. So, just do the math. With 1,000 strength, we're getting 200% increased spell damage, which then gives us another 400% increased attack damage. But it doesn't stop there, because this is one of the few skills in the game that gets to use this weird interaction. So we get to use both Iron Will and Iron Grip, because Iron Will, we're converting spell damage strength's bonus to spell damage that then gets translated to attack damage. But Iron Grip, we get to directly apply strength's damage bonus to projectile attack damage as well. So and this interaction probably works because that last little bit that says as well as melee damage, and you can look at the POB and turn this on and off and see that it's working yourself, or you can do it in game as well. It does apply. So both of these do give this nice bonus, which is just a really neat additional interaction. So we're getting chaos damage from strength. We're getting to convert spell damage into attack damage with strength. We're getting to convert strength into projectile damage. This just feels great. The amount that you can do with strength now in the game is just ridiculous. You can see I'm taking call to arms and left clicking Enduring Cry, just for some additional endurance charge generation, as well as the life regen is nice every 8 seconds. It's just a whatever. It's 1 point. You don't really have to spec into it. It's not a necessity. We're grabbing Unwavering Stance, and we are definitely grabbing Eldritch Battery. Absolutely necessary. The only way I would not take Eldritch Battery here, the only way it'd be possible is if you wanted to permanently socket alt quality greater multiple projectile support. There's one that reduces mana cost per point of quality, and you can have 50% with this Diala setup, which reduces the cost of everything by half, which then fixes a lot of your problems. Now, the other thing you can do is get Lake of Kalandra minus mana cost onto your rings. If you want to invest more into your rings, you could get awesome setups with strength, cast speed, and minus mana cost, and make everything practically free. That would be a great alternative to Eldritch Battery. But as it is, definitely a necessity here. Now, as we were talking about earlier, the power charge. It would be nice to have the additional from a corruption on the helmet, so that we could have 9. Now, what would be the ideal choice here? And in my opinion, your best in slot is going to be your best in slot here is probably going to be what's it called? Right, Devouring Diadem. It's hard swapping between Diala's and Devouring Diadem. There's too many D's here. My brain just kept going Diala's Malefiction. Anyways, if you could get a Devouring Diadem with the mana reservation efficiency, because this is key. We need the mana reservation efficiency because, as I'll show you in a second, we are using Spell Slinger along with 4 different spells in this build, and that takes almost all of our mana. So you need this mana reservation efficiency. Now, the thing about Spell Slinger is that it specifically says this skill's mana reservation is the total of the mana reservations of supported skills and cannot be further modified. Now, I did testing with this, and that's not true. Yes, the enchant of course applies, so that's already one kind of outlier to this logic. But my testing here is that on Devouring Diadem also worked. The socketed gems have 25% increased reservation efficiency, also applied. I could prove that real quick, but I don't feel the need to. Just either take my word or do the testing. So your best case scenario, in my opinion, would be combining these 2 reservation efficiencies. So you use a Devouring Diadem, get the Spell Slinger enchant, and then corrupt it. Don't do this in this order. Get a corrupted +1 power charge, Devouring Diadem, and then go and get the enchant on it with some corrupted, with a tainted blessing. Don't don't do this the other way around. You'll never be that. I haven't even done it yet. I've run a bunch of labs and have failed to do this. I don't know how many I've run now, but I still haven't, unfortunately, found the enchant for my helm. But that's the plan, because that would give us 55% increased mana reservation for Spell Slinger, which gives us a little bit more mana. Let's take a look at that setup real quick, though. So we've got Divergence Spell Slinger, and the reason we're using Divergent is because that actually slows down our spells. They have reduced cooldown recovery rate. Why would we want to do this? You don't need to cast offering skills every 0.1 seconds, or what, it's not 0.1, but we want to slow down that mana cost as much as possible. We will have plenty of ramping even with Divergent Spell Slinger placed in there. So we're actually using the downside of Divergent Spell Slinger as an upside here. The other 3 here, the offering skills, we're using Divergent Bone Offering, Divergent Spearing Offering, and Anomalous Flesh Offering. And so we'll go through those real quick one by one. Divergent Bone Offering just gives us additional block and spell chance. So what we're getting out of this is 20% block chance, 20% spell block chance, and 2% life regen per second from block. Not bad. What do we get from Divergent Spirit Offering? We get 20% crit multiplier, 100% increased crit strike chance. Not bad. And what do we get from Flesh Offering? We get an additional 15% cast speed, an additional 30% attack speed, and 15. Sorry, we're cutting these in half, and we're cutting them in half because of our our necromancer skill, that it doesn't apply them at full value, it applies them at 50%, so we get half of all of this. But then cast speed gets boosted up by 3 times, so actually it's giving us 45% increased attack speed. And these are actually separate lines, so I think that they might actually apply separately. We might actually get 15 attack speed and then 15 cast speed converted, so a total of 60% here, which, is great. It's hard to tell. This build is so fast that I would have to be just looking. I would have to quickly look at the configuration, see if it's actually making a difference or not. So that's our first Spellslinger setup. The second Spellslinger setup is over here with Unearth and GMP. We're trying to create as many corpses as we can so that we can consume as many as we can as quickly as we can. And when we do it this way, go back to Blood Aqueducts here, you will see it consumes them very, very, very fast. Also, another spell that you can use in here that would probably be the most damaging skill that you could use is the Detonate Dead with conversion to chaos damage. With this setup, you'd have 100% chaos damage conversion, and so yeah, it could be a Detonate Dead, cast on crit Detonate Dead build, which would be way too meta for me. But anyways, so this is how we ramp up our attack speed very, very, very fast. And what is our increase to attack speed, you ask? Well, let me get our frenzy charges real quick. Let's just run to the first. Looks like I actually killed them already. But we'll run to these guys. Okay, we got our 3 frenzy charges. Let's look over here. 732, 794, 867%. 867% increased attack speed. That's a lot of increased attack speed. We're talking about 11 attacks per second with weapons that have 1.2 attacks per second. That's ridiculous. And that is why we're also dual wielding, because when you're talking about this much of an increase, then the 15% more attack speed that's coming from dual wielding is suddenly, or is it 10%? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 15%. But it becomes very strong in this case, because alternatively, right, you could use Malachai's Loop, for instance, and have get the additional power charge, and not suffer the downside by using something like the Grand Spectrums with power charges, and so that you could always just have your power charges, and you'd have more of them with the loop, and you'd get some additional block chance using a shield, and all the bonuses of using a shield, the additional energy shield, so that you could have more mana sustain, so and so. But the multiplier in this case, the attack speed multiplier from dual wielding, is really nice. So that's most of what's going on with the bonuses here. The other things I didn't show on the tree are that we're wanting to use a Lethal Pride here. We're wanting to use that because we're looking for strength everywhere we can get it, and that Lethal Pride gives +4 on the smaller notable nodes and +2 on stat nodes, so it gives us a lot of additional strength. This particular seed in this particular location gives me increases to strength. I think I've got 5 here, so there's a +21 there. There is a +5% increased strength there. There's a +5% increased strength there. A +5% increased strength there. There's also a 5% chance to deal double damage here I need to grab. So that's why we're using that. We're not even utilizing Chainbreaker, obviously. You can use any Lethal Pride. We're just trying to gain strength. We're using an efficient training here just to convert intelligence to strength. We're using a split personality with strength and life just to gain more strength and life. Again, we're just trying to gain strength wherever we can. We've got a node over here for some accuracy, as well as we do have precision socketed. It's the one aura we're running and that we can afford to run. This is what allows us to have 98% hit chance, which is pretty good. We use that along with Sublime Vision, because we have sometimes having mana problems isn't so bad, because it means you can only use one aura, and when you can only use one aura, it means Sublime Vision becomes a whole lot more tantalizing than it would otherwise. And Sublime Vision is also why we almost get to cap out our crit chance rate. You can see this 42%, but that's without any power charges. And power charges scales our crit rate huge on this build. So that pretty much covers the tree, the concept of the character. It just an overall super satisfying, super off meta, maybe one of the most off meta. Like I said, they were talking about this being one of the most dead skills. I don't know if I agree with that, but it was actually really fun. If there is a desire to see more gameplay, I'm happy to show it off. This character is level 91 at the moment. I will probably be playing them a bit more just because this is another build that's just so fun. I really can't overstate that. I mean, my idea here is probably skewed because I subject myself to a lot of misery with a lot of really bad off-meta skills and builds. So when you come across something that's this fast and as a mapper, it just probably hits me a little harder than your average person that's going through like meta skills or something. But I think anybody would be more than satisfied mapping with a build like this. One of the things I didn't talk about is the defenses. The biggest weakness of the defenses here is physical mitigation. We have virtually none. We're really relying on our granite flask to give us just that little bit of extra. When we've, of course, got our offerings going, we do have, right now, I have 55% block and 20% spell block, which there's a nice little node here that gives a ton of additional cast speed and block in both attack and spell damage, which I would probably path to with some of the last points to get that spell block attack block almost capped out. That would be really nice. I think that defensively the build would feel a lot better with that. As it is, it's just a pretty average. It doesn't have great layers of mitigation. We're really relying on the fact that we kill everything before it kills us, and block does the rest. And with some flasks to intervene if it really needs to, and some guard, our poor molten shell that doesn't scale very well because we just don't have that much. That's the downside of using Dialas, of course, right? So that's about it. I don't think I covered that, we are using Leash of Oblation so that we can get all of the offerings at once. I don't think I mentioned that. I also think I did skip over the fact. I mentioned that we were using Ashes, but in case you're not familiar with Ashes, there it is. Real quick, as far as cost, this is not a cheap build. Ashes, Dialas, and Replica Alberons are all going to cost you, although Dialas is down to almost just one Divine. This is an awesome item to mess around with for only one Divine. And Ashes with plus 30% qualities that probably going to run you at least 20. Replica Alberons is probably going to run you another 20. So it's not a cheap, I'm not going to pretend it's super cheap build. And with that in mind, at the beginning when I was talking about socketing Forbidden Flesh or Forbidden Flame from Dark Pact, with this in mind, maybe just go ahead and do it. I mean, you're already spending a decent amount on the gear, I guess. I'm finally starting to run low. I've made 10 characters, and I've just started using all my money rather haphazardly. I think I'm down to my last 50 Divines or so, which is a good place to end the league. So, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I do apologize if it was hard to see Path of Building again or any of the... That's why I wasn't really using much Path of Building in this video. I had some complaints that it was very hard to see it in my build, which is why I was just trying to zoom into my actual tree here. I will add... I'll do a little bit of work on the Path of Building and I'll stick in the description. So it won't be there right away when I upload it. Sorry about that. It doesn't the build doesn't reflect very well in Path Building. Something going a little wacky with it in there. The last time I put it in, it was giving me numbers that were obviously far too low, even with the configuration changed up. I'm not sure if it just couldn't. I might have to add some manual multipliers for the speed to account for things like corpse pact. But that's about it. Like I said, this will be my last build. I'm thinking of doing one more video on. I did revisions to my previous replica Alberon's Vol Earthquake build. That build is super strong now. It got new tech that pushed it towards 100% crit rate, and I did Ubers with it. It's just absurd. I really like that build for being such a meme. It's really great. I might do one more video just covering the changes that I did for that build. You can check it out in my other videos if you're curious about that. But anyways, otherwise, that'll be it for me for the league. Hope you guys are having fun. Hope that you're able to maybe get some inspiration to do something a little bit off meta here. Last shout out for the guild I'm in. If you're not familiar with Nito, he has his own guild and our own Discord. It's totally open to the public. Anybody can join. It's called Noteworthy Interactions. You can find links to it on Nito's YouTube. He's another content creator, just like me, just like people like others in the community like Weezus and Wolfio and the guys that like doing off meta stuff. And our community is always active in the build showcase and theory crafting discords, always chatting on a daily basis. It's a great place to go for like minds and this sort of thing. So if you're looking for like-minded people that like to mess around with the stuff, check it out. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of the league, and I might catch you next league. Thanks.